is one of my favorite holiday traditions. And I've been reading this story for my whole life. We've been sharing it here. I shared it in my first community, and we've been sharing it here for 15 years. And there's always something new. There's always something new. So I invite you to bring your child to the room. Bring your inner child. We've got some spots down here for little ones who want to see better. They can come down here and sit on the floor if they want to. You're welcome to come on up here. And that would be great. Yeah, there you go. So. Every who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot. But the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be, perhaps, that his shoes were too tight. But I think the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve, hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, Grinchy frown at the warm lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now, hanging a mistletoe wreath.
And they're hanging their stocking.
He snarled with a sneer.
Tomorrow is Christmas. It's practically here.
Then he growled, with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming.
I must find a way to stop Christmas from coming.
For tomorrow, he knew all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early. They'd rush for their toys. And then, oh, the noise, 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 noise. That's one thing he hated. The noise, 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 noise. Then the Whos, young and old, would sit down to a feast. And they'd feast, and they'd feast. And they'd feast, 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 feast. They would feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beast, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Whos would start singing. And they'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing, 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 sing. And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought,
I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must stop Christmas from coming. But how?
Then he got an idea. An awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea.
I know just what to do.
The Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat. And he chuckled and clucked.
What a great Grinchy trick! With this coat and this hat, I'll look just like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer.
The Grinch looked around. But since reindeers are scarce, there was none to be found. That stopped the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said,
If I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead.
So, he called his dog Max. Then he took some red thread, and he tied a big horn on the top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. Then the Grinch said,
"Giddy up!"
and the sleigh started down toward the home where the Who's lay a snooze in their town. All their windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air. All the Who's were all dreaming sweet dreams without care when he came to the first little house on the square.
And this house is stop number 1.
The old Grinchy Claus hissed, and he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, well, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once for a moment or two. Then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where all the little Who's stockings all hung in a row.
These stockings,
He grinned.
are the first thing to go.
Then he slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant around the whole room, and he took every present. Pop guns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn and plums. He stuffed them in bags. Then the Grinch, very nimbly, stuffed all the bags, one by one, up the chimney.
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. You really are a heel. You're as cuddly as a cactus. You're as charming as an eel, Mr. Grinch. You're a bad banana with a greasy black peel. You're a vile one, Mr. Grinch. You have termites in your smile.
You have all the tender sweetness of a seasick crocodile.
Mr. Grinch. Given the choice between the two of you, I pick the seasick crocodile.
Then he slunk to the icebox. He took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding. He took the roast beast. He cleaned out that icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took their last can of Who hash. Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee.
And now
Grinned the Grinch.
I will stuff up the tree.
And the Grinch grabbed the tree. And he started to shove when he heard the small sound, like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast, and he saw a small Who. Little Cindy Lou Who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter, who got out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, "Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why?" But you know that old Grinch was so smart and so slick. He thought up a lie, and he thought it up quick.
Why, my sweet little tot.
The fake Santa Claus lied.
There's a light on this tree that will light on one side. I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there and I'll bring it back here.
And his fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head, and he got her a drink, and he sent her to bed. And when Cindy went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up.
You're a foul one, Mr. Grinch. You're a nasty, wasty skunk. Your heart is full of unwashed socks. Your soul is full of gunk, Mr. Grinch. The three words that best describe you are, and I quote, stink, stank, stunk.
Then the last thing he took was the log for their fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, the old liar. On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was 15:15 dawn. All the Who's still abed. All the Who's still a snooze when he packed up his sled, packed it up with their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags, the tinsel, the trimmings, the trappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to the tip top to dump it.
Pooh, pooh to the Hughes!
He was Grinchishly humming.
They're finding out now, no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a moment or two. Then, all the Who's down in Whoville will all cry, hoo, hoo. That's a noise
Grinned the Grinch.
which I simply must hear.
So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear. And he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, and it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, the sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry, very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes, then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling.
How could it be so? It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes, or bags.
And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before.
Maybe Christmas
He thought,
doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more.
and what happened then? Well, in Whoville they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes since that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light, and he brought back the toys and the food for the feast. And he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast. our little ones for sharing, yeah, my favorite, absolute favorite Christmas tradition, the Grinch. And it's always so interesting. We come to this time of the year, and some people say, are we going to do the Grinch again? You're going to do the Grinch again, right? And other people say, are you going to do the Grinch again? Maybe I won't see you until January. You're going to do all those like holiday things, right? Yeah, all those holiday traditions. And it's so interesting for us to take a moment to stop and ask ourselves, why do we do these things? Why do we have these rituals? Why do we have the traditions? Yesterday we decorated our house, and we're going to get our Christmas tree, and we're going to celebrate Hanukkah here next week, and after that the winter solstice. And after Christmas we'll be celebrating Kwanzaa. And then we have our burning bowl, and we do a beautiful release ceremony, and we have a prayer vigil for 24 hours. Don't forget to start signing up for the prayer vigil. An hour. You can pick any hour between 12 noon on the 31st and 12 noon on the 1st. Come and pray for peace and pray for your own life and set your intention. And we do these rituals every year. Now, how many of us are faced with the notion that, some of these rituals are fun, and some of them are like, okay, it's getting a little old. How many traditions and rituals have we struggled with in our own lives? And so what's the point? Why do we even do this? So a tradition is a mindset. It's a way in which we decide to look at the world, how we want to experience the world. A tradition is a whole host of beliefs and ideas and attitudes that we have about the way life is and the way life works, and that can be passed down through the families, through our culture. We have lots of cultural traditions that we share, and then the rituals are the repetitive activities that we do that allow us to express, explore, and experience our traditions. And that's true whether we're talking about a cultural tradition, whether we're talking about a religious tradition, or a family tradition. These rituals that we do are ways in which we explore and experience and express the traditions that have meaning to us, that have meaning and purpose to us. And sometimes we forget what the meaning and purpose is. And that's when our traditions, maybe they become a little rote. Maybe they become a little, they just become boring. Or we ask ourselves, well, why? Why are we doing this again? I mean, really, we did it last year. Isn't once enough? Children are great at picking up rituals. How many of us have had a child? You did it one year is enough to create a ritual, right? The next year is, well, we have to do it just like that because that's how we do it now. And you see that there's something actually within us as human beings that there's something about that, the repetitiveness of it, that provides us with safety, security, provides us with an understanding. Well, actually, I have a film clip that's going to express this a whole lot better than I can. So, Brian, if you would bring up our film clip, that'd be great.
Fiddler on the roof. It sounds crazy, now. But here, in our little village of Artemka, you might say every one of us is a fiddler on the roof, trying to scratch out a pleasant, simple tune without breaking his neck. It isn't easy. You may ask, Why do we stay up there if it's so dangerous? Well, we stay because Anatevka is our home. And how do we keep our balance? That I can tell you in one word. Tradition! We've kept our balance for many, many years. Here in Anatevka, we have traditions for everything. How to sleep, how to eat, how to work, how to wear clothes. For instance, we always keep our heads covered and always wear a little prayer shawl. This shows our constant devotion to God. You may ask, how did this tradition get started? I'll tell you. I don't know. And because of our traditions, every one of us knows who he is and what God expects him to do.
Because of our traditions, everyone knows who he is and what God expects him to do. Our traditions, do you see, our traditions give us balance in our lives. There's something about the repetition of it that brings us back over and over and over again to the worldview, the mindset that we have, that we are a part of. And what an interesting thought that it is our rituals and traditions that are a part of what brings us balance. Because our lives can get very busy throughout the year. All kinds of stuff's going on. And we've moved, or we've changed a job, or something has happened, good, bad, or indifferent. And at the end of the year, everything's different. And yet, isn't there something that's the same about it? Because all of a sudden, we're engaged in the sort of the repetitive ritual of whatever our holiday traditions happen to be. And we find ourselves once again in that place, and we have an opportunity to look back. Oh, look what we were doing last year. Oh, look what was the year before that, or 10 years ago. Think of where we were, what we were doing. Do you see? And it helps mark the seasons and changes of our lives. But more importantly, it helps bring us back to the tradition or the mindset or the worldview out of which the rituals and the expression of that tradition is sprung. But as Tevye says here in Anatevka, they don't always know why they do the things that they do. And so this is, it seems to me, then where we as spiritual beings, maturing in our spirituality, we're really invited into the question, why do we do a ritual? And what really more importantly is, what meaning does the ritual have? What is it about our spiritual understanding, our worldview, our understanding about ourselves and the universe? What particular thing is this ritual wanting us to remember? What meaning is it bringing us back to? Because that's the idea of the repetition, bringing us back and back and back and back again to something. What is it? Now, my experience over time, as I have spiritually matured, that the rituals and traditions in my life, they actually bring me back to more, how should I say this? To a more fuller, richer, deeper, meaningful understanding of my own spiritual tradition, my own spirituality, my own life. If we are maturing as maturing spiritual beings, each time we're brought back, we look at the tradition, if we're open to it and available to it, we look at it with fresh eyes. We look at it from a new place. And something new, something deeper is revealed. And perhaps another layer of meaning is unfolded for us. If we find ourselves over and over saying, well, I don't know why we do this, why I do this particular thing or this particular ritual, and there is no deeper meaning or nothing more revealed, then we might want to ask ourselves the question, okay, do we want to keep doing it? Because we have now lost the connection of that ritual to the cultural or religious or family or personal tradition that that ritual was birthed out of, or that that ritual is bringing us back to. So this is why we do rituals so heavily at this time of year. It's an opportunity for us to express and experience our cultural traditions. The Grinch is a classic example of a cultural ritual and tradition that we are embedded in. Where Hanukkah will be looking at the Jewish roots of our culture and our spirituality. In the winter solstice, for Christmas, for Kwanzaa, we'll be doing the same. Each time, we'll be looking at what is the root of the tradition, what is the root of these rituals, and what is it bringing, what's the meaning that it's bringing into our lives, that we can be brought back to, that we can see with new eyes, with fresh eyes. So, as I said, I've been reading this story forever. For my whole life, I've been reading this story. And I love this. I love this this part of the season, the holiday season, when we get to do this. And for me, the story is always, it's always about love and family and kind of getting back together and, and understanding how important it is to open your heart and be open-hearted. And so today, as I was reading it for today, as I was preparing for today, I realized that for me this year, there's a whole nother layer of meaning in this story. And I've been reading it for so long. So when we look at the Grinch, what I noticed for the first time, what I really focused on looking at the Grinch in this story is how the Grinch, he lives out there in this icy cave. And he looks down at the Who's, totally separated, totally disengaged. Do you know that the Grinch is actually a Who? Did you know that? He's actually a Who. And he comes from Whoville. But he lives way up there in the mountains in his ice cave. And he's decided that they're not okay. And he's decided that the whole Christmas thing is just annoying. And as we think about that, as I was thinking about that, how often we find ourselves disembedded from our own lives, disengaged, how often we can feel isolated, how part of the human condition is to feel separate from each other, separate from our family, separate from the divine, separate from the one life. And what happens when we find ourselves isolated and separated, what happens is that causes a great deal of pain. And we project then that pain outside of ourselves because that pain is too hard for us to experience. And we can do that when we feel separated from our family. And then we project it on the other family members, and we make them wrong, and we say, well, I'm not going to go because they're such jerks. Because we can't experience the pain and of our own sense of separation. And we can do that with our families. We can do that when we feel disembedded from our community. We can do that when we feel disembedded or disengaged from the divine. And yet the truth is, the reality of it is, that we can never be disembedded from the whole, from the one life that we're a part of. We can never be taken out of that. We can never run away from it, and it can never be taken from us. We may forget. We may not experience it. But the reality of who we are as radiant, magnificent beings of the one life, the reality that we are the divine making itself manifest in the world, this can never change. And this story, the tradition of this story this year reminded me of that truth. That no matter how isolated or separate I might feel at any given time, I can never be separated from the one.
Man.
Thank you. You can hear that amen a little louder. Absolutely. We can never be separated. And so everything that we do, all of our spiritual practices, all of the rituals that we do, they are designed to remind us so that we remember who we are and what our place in the divine is. Just as Tevye said, as we remember this, what happens? We grow. Our heart grows. Our consciousness grows. We become reacquainted with the larger reality of who we are. We rediscover ourselves. We remember who and what we are. And that we could never be disembedded in the first place. It's so clear to me how important this is to us. As I realized going on my sabbatical, one of the things that I realized going on my sabbatical is that I could go and leave and be so completely unattached to anything that was going on in my normal everyday life because I knew I belonged there. And I knew that when I got back, there would be a Petra-shaped space that I would move back into. And when I got back, those connections were all immediately already all there. In the past in my life, when I didn't feel connected to my own life, I would never have been able to leave it in that way. Do you see? Because I would have constantly been trying to be embedded in my life. How many of us know that we belong? We belong in our own lives. We belong in our own families. We belong in this community. We belong in life. We belong as part of the whole. That is the truth of our being. That is who we are. That is what we are. A part of that. And anything that brings us back to that, any tradition, any ritual that brings us back to that, opens our heart, breaks us open, grows our consciousness. And we remember who and what we are. And do you see that changes everything? That changes everything. It changed the whole Grinch's demeanor. It changed what he thought about life. And it changed how he behaved towards life. And it changed his entire experience. Because he remembered. He had that heart-opening, that consciousness-growing experience. And I was astonished to think about it. I really invite you to think about that. For those of you who have taken classes, who have learned about our form of affirmative prayer, if you have not, I highly invite you into the Foundations class in January. I'll be teaching. Our form of affirmative prayer, we call it spiritual mind treatment. It is a ritual. There are 5 steps to our ritual of prayer, and we do it in a ritualistic manner. It is our tradition to do it that way because it reminds us who we are and what we are. We are invited in our form of affirmative prayer. We always start with something that's true about life, about God, about the divine, about this wholeness. And we spend our time in that part of our prayer until we are embedded in the remembrance. This is the truth. There is one life. That life is beautiful and powerful and joyous. That life is the wellspring of all of express itself into the wholeness. That life is the very foundation from which all creation springs. It's the ground of being and the intention of love and the wellspring of joy. It is abundance making itself manifest. It's perfect health and wholeness. Can you feel it in the room? Can you feel it? This is what's true about the life that we're a part of. And when we remind ourselves, and we over and over and over again, and we say these things to ourselves so that we remember who we are, what we are. There is this such an amazing place within each one of us where we touch the divine reality. It is as close as your breath. That one breath, if we take that one breath, right there at the bottom of the breath, we find the center. That center, which is the center of life itself. We can never be disembedded from that when we can breathe into that place and take that breath and say those words, whatever words are required, so that we'll remember this is the truth of life. And you see, when we do that, when we know this truth, that there is this amazing reality, this untethered, unlimited, unbreakable, unshakable reality that each one of us is a part of. You see, in our prayer, then, when we can remember that, it's so powerful to remember that we're a part of it. It's not out there. It's not, oh, there's one infinite reality and then there's me. No, it's an infinite reality. And then there's us. So that infinite reality, that love, that life, that joy, that abundance, that wholeness, that perfection, that beauty, that astonishing experience of life itself, that is the truth of who you are. That is the wellspring of your life. That is what is seeking to express itself as you. And so in our prayer, we remember this truth. I am one with the divine. I'm a part of the whole. Everything that I can say about this one universal power and presence that is the center of all creation, I can also say is the center of me and the center of you. Because we are all a part of the whole. And now we are completely and perfectly embedded in life, in the divine. We are completely and perfectly re-embedded in the truth of who we are and in the truth of what we are. And do you see, when we know that, when we have allowed our prayer to grow our consciousness and open our heart to the truth of this reality, it changes everything. And now when we pray for something that we seek to express in life for ourselves or for someone else, you see, we are now praying from the truth of our being. We're not praying from our fear or our littleness or our doubt. We're not praying like the Grinch, how can I make this happen? How can I force this thing to happen because it's out there and it's horrible and I have to fix it, I have to do something about it? Do you see? It's completely changed because we're standing in a different place. We are standing embedded in the truth of our being, embedded in the spiritual understanding that we have, embedded in the experience of being one with the divine. And now when we look at our life and we say, I want to express it this way. Life desires to express it as me that way. I seek this healing or this blessing for that person. I'm now speaking from the divine place of being embedded. Our consciousness has grown, our heart has opened so profoundly that we're speaking from that truth. It changes everything. changes everything. That's what our traditions are about. That's why we do these rituals. To remember who we are, to remember what we are, to enliven and enrich our spiritual practice, to find a depth and a real experience of the divine in our lives. Not just words that we read about in a book or nice conversations that we have with a friend or lovely little Facebook posts that we put, little positive Facebook posts that we put out there. But not just those things, but a deeply embedded, empowering experience of the truth of who we are. That's why I read the Grinch to you every year. Why we celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas and the winter solstice and Kwanzaa and the burning bowl. That's why we do these year after year after year, so that we can carve a deeper and deeper and deeper place of meaning and richness in our own lives. I invite you now, as we continue to move through the holiday season, I invite you to find that place where you are embedded in your own spiritual life, in your spiritual tradition, where you are embedded in the divine. Find those rituals, seek out those things that remind you of that. Look at the rituals that maybe you're not sure about and ask, what is the meaning here? What's the deeper reality that is seeking to be revealed here to me? Allow your rituals and traditions to become alive, or let them go and find new ones. Because the truth is, you belong in your life. And I know as well as you do that there are things that happen in our lives where we feel like we've popped out of that. And we feel out of balance, uncertain, not sure about what's going to happen next. And so we come over and over and over again in our prayers, in a daily ritual, in our meditations, in a daily ritual, in these holiday rituals, in an annual ritual, an annual way of bringing ourselves back to who and what we are. I want to close with a reading from our book this month, this thing called You by Ernest Holmes. As I said, this is my favorite book. It's when people ask me, what book should I give to someone? What new, to introduce science of mind or this positive, practical spirituality? This is the book. If you've read this book before, my favorite assignment that I give to people, and I'm going to give it collectively to the community. If you've read this book before, or even if you haven't and you'd like to take up the assignment, read the book, the entire book, in the first person. Every time where he says you, read I. And it becomes an extended meditation about the truth of who you are and what's true about your life. So I just invite you to go within. Take a breath. There at the bottom of the breath, you find the center. Here's what Ernest Holmes wrote. You are part of the universal mind, one with the universal substance. You live, move, and have your being in pure spirit. You experience this good in such degree as you accept it, believe it, and feel it. Since the only life you can have is the life of the Spirit within you, you need but permit its radiance to flow through your thought into self-expression. You are surrounded by a dynamic force, a great surge of living power. You are immersed in and saturated with the vital essence of life. Its presence permeates everything, binding all together in one complete whole. the affirmation he writes for us. Let these words be your words. Knowing that the loving presence is always closer to me than my very breath, I have nothing to fear. I feel this loving protection around me. I know that the song of joy, of love, and of peace is forever chanting its hymn of praise and beauty at the center of my being. Therefore, I tune out of my mind all unhappy and negative ideas. I turn the dial of my thought into the sunshine of life, into brightness and laughter, into the joyous presence of radiant spirit. I lay aside all anxiety, all striving, and let the law of divine love operate through me in every area of my life. Joyfully, I anticipate greater abundance, more success, and a deeper peace. Joy wells up within my mind, and life sings its song of ecstasy in my heart. As you enter into life, feeling the divine presence in everything, more and more you will hear a song of joy singing at the center of your being. You have only to be still and listen.